everyone, this is Neon in for the week 3 of ZEPETOR class mentorship. As you may see, this setup is very different from the previous ones. It's because today we're only tackling hair, and this can be used on anything. It doesn't have to be ZEPETO. I'm just literally gonna teach you how to do hair. So let's hide all of the other heads and let's start with straight hair. So for straight hair, I'm gonna use this color. So the first step is kind of having a color palette, and this can go darker if you want to. So that's the first step, and now we're gonna do this. Let me make it. Here we go. For the first step, you should find your separation line. I am going to make a widow's peak, kind of. Just outline the hairline. So this is my hairline, and now I'm going to start on drawing the shape. So what are you supposed to do in this situation? Just add like a few inches, a space between the hair and the head, because it adds more volume. But if you want to be more slick, it can be like very on the head. So one of my rules for making strands on hair or trunks on hair is 2 to 3 slits like this. For the bangs, I usually do more, but in like the ends of the hair, I just usually do like 4 to 3 strands. I'm doing this curve to add it more like a bounce and volume. Now for the other side, I'll be adding like 3. Now we have our sketch. Let's go to another layer, and we'll be adding the second darkest color in our palette. You can use this, change it to layer up. Oh no, never mind, canvas it is. Next, we'll be doing some lighting or separation. So since this is like the second most darkest color, we will be using Protect Alpha, so that our strokes don't go outside. So what all of you are seeing here and what I'm doing, this is like the best way to add like some sort of depth or form. You should be adding highlights to these places right here, and also right here where the hair goes like this, because it's catching all of the light. Next, we'll be using this. Next, we'll be merging these two layers together. That's how I usually do it. And now we'll be using watercolor to help us blend in all of them. I'm doing exactly what I would do for highlights on the hair. First, make this and then pick the color and go inward. Making like little H shapes is the goal here. For the top of the head, you can make it more lighter than the rest, since this is where all of the light is being catched the most. Here I'm adding like little outlines for the strands to make it have more texture. Here I'm adding more of the triangle shapes. Since we're almost at the end of the rendering, you can add more details if you want. But remember, this is like a simple render. You don't need to overcomplicate things. Sometimes less is better. And that's it for straight hair. Next, we'll be doing wavy hair. Okay, for the wavy hair, we'll be doing like a bluish color. One tip on color picking, choosing your own colors without the color picker, you should do this, not like this. You should go in a diagonal line, not ascending. It helps keeps the values true and also the saturation. I will be doing like a side bang, fully side bang. This type of hairstyle, I do it every time for my persona, not the Neoma one, but for my art account. So I'll be doing this hairstyle. You can choose whatever hairstyle you want. Add some distance from the scalp and hair to add more volume.
And when you're done with the line art, fill it in with the second darkest shade. And once that's done, we'll be using the flat brush since it has more texture. You might be familiar with this brush, it is very popular for hair, especially for making highlights and strands, but today we're just gonna use it for texture. Do the same highlighting method that we use for the straight hair, but do it on the protruding bumps. Next, add the darkest shade. Right now, we don't really need to worry about making strands, we're just blocking in the shades. When you're done with blocking in the colors, now you can blend in the line art. Here, I'm loosely adding smaller strands or chunks to the hair, but this would be faster if you have a reference. I'm just going off. Similar to the previous one, do little S shapes for the highlights. Here, I'm adding a lighter color to the darkest shade. This is how I usually do it, but for beginners, this is not usually the best method to teach. Proceed to add more details once you think you've done enough. And that's it for wavy hair. Next up is curls, and we are gonna use a pink color. I'm going to start outlining my hair. I'm going to do some bangs, and then for the high ponytail, I'll be curling it all the way. And for the curls, do these shapes. It's like an S, but not really. You can practice these shapes if you're having trouble. Or when you've produced one good result, you can just do this. Duplicate your best result and start duplicating it, and then erase some to make it blend in more naturally. Once that's done, as usual, add the second darkest shade. But if your palette has more shades, use the middle shade. For this, we will be using the flat brush again. For this section, I'll be separating each part of the hair. It's usually easier to render hair when it's all separated in parts. I usually separate it from bangs, scalp, and the back hair. Again, start highlighting at the bumps and do little H shapes. Add the darkest shades to these parts. Add shading to the underside of the curls. I've realized at this point some parts of the recording has begun to freeze or stop in one single frame, so I think it's corrupted. Here I'm adding some little details on the darkest parts of the hair. But to summarize everything that we've missed due to the corruption, we're just doing the same methods that we did with the wavy hair. And when you feel like your hair is too thin, you can always duplicate it and use the darken layer to add the same darkest shade for consistency. Now for the bangs, I'm adding the highlights. Then I'm using the darkest shade to add shading at the bottom of the bangs. And also adding separation lines for the chunks. And that's it for curly hair. Next up is coils or kinks. This time we'll be using a brownish yellowish color. Unlike all of the other hairstyles, I'm blocking in the silhouette of this hair. Again, this would be much more easier if you use references. It will help you save time. Here I'm filling up the shape and also adding some little curls at the end of the hair, and I'll be showing you later how I do the brush strokes. By doing the brush strokes, just do some swirls. Practice this if you having trouble. Draw them out close together but not too close. Also, don't draw them too long. As you can see here, I'm adding the highlights manually by doing one curved stroke at a time. Use the coils below as your guide. And remember to do them big and noticeable. Don't draw them too close or you won't be able to tell them apart. And it also ruins the illusion. For the dark parts, use the second darkest shade to add the hair as highlighting. Also add little strands of hair sticking out. And that's all for coils. I think this is one of the most difficult lessons that we're gonna tackle. But if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask me.